I like that design a lot.
Greg saw it and was like, can I get one of these? And I was like, mm, you have to go to 6 a.m.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's actually a very easy method. A lot of times people ask like, what's 6 a.m. like? You're one of those 6 a.m. guys,
It's
or
early. That's what it's like.
just come to class.
This is episode 2 of season 4 of the 6 a.m. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Beck. This is my other host, Pat George. We're in the house, but not in the house, but in the house right now. And you know what? What is 6 a.m., Pat?
Well, it's a jujitsu class. It's a crew. It's a mindset. It's
Is it a
a
lifestyle?
it can be. You know what I mean? It's
No.
no, it's not.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
yes,
it is.
it's.
If you're somebody who gets up early, I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
You know what? You know what the best way to describe 6 a.m. is? It's
Lay it on me, daddy.
it's like that noise that you make, and it varies from person to person, but it's something along the lines of when you get up, we're
Yeah,
we're that noise, but every time you make that noise, you smile a little bit.
because you got up again.
Right. Yeah, you got up
Yeah,
again, and it's all about getting up. Six
that's
a.m.
right.
is all about getting up
That
over
was
and
our first
over and over.
tagline, man. Get up.
It's still honestly it's one of the best because it's a thing of like there's there's mindset, but then there's also like to me, me, I'm a big fan of word economy, and I'm a big fan of sayings in general, like
Yeah,
mindsets, like
yeah,
kind of condensed into a saying or a phrase. I'm not
right.
and I'm not necessarily one of those people that's going to be. I wasn't like I always called them word shirt people. The people that say nine
Yeah,
out of 10 voices in my head say ho ho ho. Like
right. I'm with stupid.
no. I'm
Yeah,
not one of those guys. I'm a you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Wayne
yeah.
Wayne Gretzky. You know,
Michael Jordan.
Wayne Gretzky and Michael Jordan both said that. How you know what that is? A winner's mindset. They share
It's contagious, man.
right. So
That's 6 a.m. in a nutshell, a winner's mindset.
we can upgrade the saying. It's kind of like how like if a team doesn't win, like when they have like a this is our year, and then like the next year they're like no, but this is actually our year.
We
Right?
meant this year is our year.
Okay, I got that. So
Running shit. I
six
like it. Our
can
6 a.m. is fight to live. No, live to fight, fight to live.
and keep getting up, please.
Yeah, get up. Yeah, we actually don't talk about like where this all came from. I mean, this podcast has been running for a couple of years, and
Yeah,
I'm sure we introed it at some point years ago. But the reality is that we're all a bunch of kooks that get up really early in the morning and go train. So the inspiration for the 6 a.m. podcast comes from the 6 a.m. crew, which is
yeah,
a group of people that get up super early in the morning in central Pennsylvania to go train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, many of which train, 3, 5 plus times a week,
yeah.
and they start the day off with a Brazilian jiu-jitsu class, and man, we rip it up, don't
Top
we?
top by one of the best. I'm telling you, Jeff.
One of
Oh,
the best.
I knew I was really drawn to almost immediately. I the first class I ever took was a like 5 p.m. class, but I quickly learned that there was a 6 a.m. class, and we could do that. Oh, I could do that before work, or I could do that before any.
Yeah,
It was really
yeah.
convenient. The first thought, it's there's something about because there 6 a.m. like people train. It's weird that there is such a weird um aversion to that. Like I know that there's not.
Getting up early, you mean?
I would never have considered myself a morning person. Yeah, I would never.
Right, 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 right,
But like
right.
when this was availed to me, it was like, Pat, you need to figure out how to make yourself a morning person because you love this thing, and this is the best time to do it. Like something about it just was like it was like a calling. And the first class I went to, it was taught by you and another Jeff, rest in peace as far as training partners. but no,
He didn't die.
not dead. I'm saying, like, as far as like him being on the, in the check-in sheet. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
there,
I mean,
there,
if you don't train, you don't exist to me. You're dead to me.
us. But no, and it was
Yep.
the original co-host. So there's new
Yep.
listeners, and sometimes you got to catch them up of sometimes your history. You know what I mean? Like there's many adaptations of this podcast, but I think it's grown to a real like shared mindset and almost damn near a cult, Jeff.
Yeah, it's pretty much a cult. But these lunatics get up at between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning to come train at 6.
Yeah.
And it's insanity. It does. I think it does. One of the things that you said, and I think is interesting, is that none of us, I mean, for the most part, are what we would consider morning people. We're not excited about getting up at the butt crack of dawn to go get our neck strangled.
Yeah.
But there's something about it that just is like it's the best way to get the hardest part of the day done with, so that
Yeah.
we can move on to the easy stuff. That being said, I am going to open mat tonight, and I suspect that there'll be several people there to take me down a couple notches.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah. I always do that where like legitimately, Jeff, yesterday, I don't know what it was. I came home from work at like 5 something, and I just kind of like plopped down on the bed and like laid back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Feet
Yeah.
were planted on the floor, and that must be, I don't know. I haven't checked with a doctor or a Chad or anything in class, but that may be the most dangerous way to sleep on your back of all time, because I I woke up and I fucking couldn't move. I felt like I was like, oh, and I was making those noises walking. I'm like, oh, I had to have Dom like give me like a back rub and like just basically dig her like
Yeah, a vitamin B shot and everything, right?
stuff. And then I was just like, she's like, are you going to jujitsu tomorrow? I'm like, yeah, yeah.
How
So
long did you sleep for?
I slept fine. I slept probably 7 or 8 hours. The other
Oh,
pretty
so you slept all night like that?
no. No, like that. I only slept for like about an hour, like
Oh,
maybe
okay, gotcha. Yeah,
5 minutes to an hour. Okay, I did. Yeah, I was there.
enough to wreck you.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, dude, but I was just like, oh, I had to like do a thing where like I couldn't sit right up. I had to like turn to my side.
You had to roll on your side to get
To
up.
like shrimp up, to like push back and like sit up a little bit like that way. It was weird. I had to ball up, but I woke up this morning and I was like, if I could wake up tomorrow and I could feel my fingertips, I'm going to class.
That's it.
And
Check,
guess
check,
what?
and check.
I could feel
Yeah,
like 4 out of 5 on each hand, so I'm good. I'm good.
perfect. You know what we're going to talk about today, Pat?
I was just about to ask.
We're going to talk about the future of jujitsu. This is, it's something that comes up all the time when we're talking about, like, especially as jujitsu is growing in terms of its popularity and influences from, people coming from different grappling arts and so forth. And, there's always the team that, or people will say this, the group of people that are like, jujitsu doesn't work, jujitsu sucks, jujitsu people are, they're lazy and they lay on their backs and all this stuff. We know full well that this is just people that got choked out a lot by folks at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. They went to go train one time and they got their asses whooped, and
Yeah.
so they hit the internet and started talking shit because they got their asses beat.
Yeah.
But with that said, maybe there's something to this this mindset or this thought that says that jujitsu is one dimensional,
Yeah.
and its thought and its processes. And so today we're going to talk about like the what does the future look like for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? When we look at like the accumulative like knowledge that's flowing into Jiu-Jitsu now, one of the first people to sort of like branch off into a different direction, but was still very much Jiu-Jitsu, was Eddie Bravo in 10th Planet.
Mhm.
And what made it so strange is that he didn't train in the gi. He doesn't teach in the gi. He doesn't train in the gi. Nobody used the gi. It was all no gi.
You know, but he would wear gi pants every once in a while, which I was always
He
like,
wore gi. He wears gi pants exclusively, I think.
I'm like, well, where'd you get them? Did you just buy you get half off?
Well, we are talking about a guy that wears shoes on the mat, so I'm just saying.
Don't remind me. I don't wanna have to send the police over to his house.
Right,
But
right.
but you're right. He was somebody that was, and also was very much he kind of does a weird guards a lot of time, rubber guard.
Yeah, so he took jujitsu and he took like the fundamentals of jujitsu and its positions and the techniques inside of it, and he created his own. We'll call it a system,
Mhm.
for a lack of better words, because I don't want to pigeonhole it. I'm just saying that there's like an intent in the way that he approached jujitsu, and it has its own terminology, it has its own, and then also its own innovation in moves and techniques.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But does that make it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or does it make it something else?
I think we had we had something similar to this because a conversation to this when we were talking about lucha libre and stuff like that, of like of saying like what is that besides just no-gi jujitsu, and what is this, and what's. I think a lot of times the splitting of hairs is comes down to people being a little too like rigid in their beliefs of like what jujitsu should be. So like the
Right.
scholars, like it's like a lot of times like how a fucking movie dork is going to be like, this movie wasn't as dramatic as Schindler's List, so it's not good. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
Dumb and Dumber is a classic. It is a classic movie, but it is not by any means following many standards of classic film. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So,
Right. One could argue it did not do those things. Right.
so I ask you, Jeff, do you think that is jujitsu maybe possibly the first martial art that can truly be subjective?
Ooh.
Do you know what I mean?
Would it be the first one that's subjective?
Because it's already like what you're asking is like, is this jujitsu what Eddie Bravo's doing? Yes, clearly.
Yeah.
He's
Right.
competing in jujitsu competitions under jujitsu rules. He
Right.
is,
It's jujitsu. Yeah, for sure.
but he is adding a flair to it where he is essentially air butting it, where he is going, there's nothing in the rule book that says a dog can't play basketball. There's not there's nothing in the rule book that says I can't banana split your ass. You know,
Right.
here comes a
Right.
twister, fool. Stuff like
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's not necessarily the most philosoph God damn it.
Philosophical.
I was going good with words earlier, Jeff. I ran out of steam.
It did.
Like that word you said, it's not so much a philosophy anymore. It is like he is doing jujitsu. The tree
Right.
does make a noise. The cat is dead.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I do answer. I answer your question with the answer. Yes, I think it is jujitsu, but also, is this like this could be possibly the first martial art, because how many updates in karate are there? How many updates in, you
Well,
know,
this is where things get interesting, right? Because if we look at the origins of jujitsu, we know that it's a Japanese art. But jujitsu, there are dozens, if not dozens of meanings of the word jujitsu in terms of Japanese martial arts. So the type of jujitsu that was exported, that would become judo and was exported to Brazil, where the Gracie family had been taught this, and it was adopted, and then adapted to what we consider to be Brazilian jiu-jitsu, isn't necessarily Brazilian. I mean, it's an art that was transformative of it much the same way that Eddie Bravo took what he learned from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and made it into 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. So too, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes from a traditional source of thought or systems that was once known as Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, changed to Judo, back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then goes to America, by way of the UFC, in the very early days, 1 through 3, if you guys remember
oh, I
UFC
remember.
1 through 3.
I
Yes.
mean, oh yeah, I know you weren't talking to me.
Right. And the Gracie family, I am, but the Gracie family came because, and let's not kid ourselves, guys. I mean, there is the element of like it introduced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to American culture on a larger scale. I'm sure there were people that were familiar with it already. And so I don't wish to like negate the fanboys and jiu-jitteros of the world that were like, I was training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu before UFC 1. Okay, cool. But at a large scale, these events, the UFC events, provided an opportunity to introduce Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to American culture. But let's not kid ourselves. The idea was for the Gracie family to come to America and establish gyms in America and have a much wider audience
Yeah.
and an empire that they could build. And they did it by way, because all credit due, they did it by way of fighting, right?
Well,
They did it by way of coming in and fighting all
fighting.
the other martial arts.
If I may make this point real quick, I think the fact that they call it Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and it started in Japan proves our point here and saying that it
Right.
absolutely can grow. But at least Eddie Bravo didn't go. Now we call it Eddie Bravo Jiu-Jitsu. You know
Right.
what I mean?
No, you know
He's
what they call it? They call it 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu.
That's right. Right. They do that. It's just the fact that every time somebody creates a new move or a new style or system, they're just like, it's called Jeff Beck Jiu Jitsu now.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
called JJJJJJ Jeff Jiu Jitsu.
Right. But so too, this
Yeah.
is, but to our point, yeah, exactly. And so there, but I think that I think there's something to honoring the legacy and to which the system under which you've taught and learned. I will forever, respect, the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is what I was taught as a martial artist.
Yeah.
Having not started specifically in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for martial arts, guys, and I know I've talked about this before in the podcast, but my initial introduction to martial arts came by way of first a book that my mom bought me on karate when she refused to give me karate lessons when
Yeah.
I was a kid. And the Karate Kid, of course, and then of course all the Chuck Norris movies, Bruce Lee, the whole nine yards. But my real introduction to training in Brazilian or in training in martial arts was Jeet Kune Do,
Mm-hmm.
which
So,
was Bruce Lee's martial art. And
oh,
the ground component of that, because we worked in the four ranges of fighting, kicking, punching, clinch, and the ground component was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or primarily made up of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is how I was introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But keeping in mind then that, like, I'm not a purist, I'm not a traditionalist. These aren't things that interest me, but I will always honor the roots of the art that I was taught in. I trained my vehicle for teaching, my delivery method for teaching submission wrestling is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
yeah.
But with that said, I think you would be wrong, and we'll just say it, you're wrong if you don't adapt or learn other arts that you can contribute to the art that you love,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if you learn something from, let's say, I use catch wrestling as an example a lot and one could argue that where did catch wrestling learn it from? It could be from something from Greco-Roman. It could be something that they learned from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and adapted
Yeah.
to catch wrestling that you learn, and now you say that comes from catch wrestling, and then somebody else yells at you and says, no, that was done by so and so in 1923 by, whatever.
Yeah.
But the point is that if you don't open your eyes and open the possibilities to expanding your own understanding of the art that you train and the art that you teach, then I think you're losing, man. You're
Yeah.
losing.
Yeah. You can't, if you're limiting yourself immediately, you're becoming the person like you're, no matter what, there's going to be advancements in anything. If you think that you got it right, or if somebody got it right back in the fucking 30s or something
Yeah.
like that, and it's never gonna get better than that, I would venture to say you're probably wrong.
Yeah.
99% of the time, I don't know. And I can't say on a case by case basis what any of those situations, but you're right. If you're not adapting your art to an advancing combat sports world in general, then you're not,
Right.
especially with the rule set change. Like recently they changed the hand on the ground for MMA. If
Yeah.
you're the hand on ground, since there's such an issue with people training ways to like get your hand lifted off the mat for a second so they can knee you in the head or something like that. And like they're just like, let's stop doing this. If your hand's on the floor, you're a bitch.
Yeah.
You're getting heated. And if your knees on the ground, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that, what a downed opponent is. Like it's going to change. So like
Right.
you're going to have to change your training methods anyway. Why not try to add things to it? Because if you're somebody who is what happens when you meet somebody that does train that stuff? You're
Well,
anything.
yeah.
You're only giving yourself, you're becoming a Swiss Army, defender.
Correct. Right. Yeah. But if you think, but if your mindset is that of like, well, that's an illegal technique, and I'm excluding things that are egregious errors in judgment when you're hurting people, that remembering that if you're with a training partner in a training environment, you are not to damage them to the extent that they're unable to train. That just makes you a dickhead.
Right.
But what I mean to say is that if somebody from a different style comes in that has a submission wrestling background, and they get you with something, and you're like, well, that's illegal at this gym. We don't do that at this gym. Then you're just making excuses. Instead, you should be like, show that to me again. I want to see that, because that makes you a true martial artist, in my opinion.
Right. Like you can get frustrated much referring even back to our last episode. You can be frustrated by a butt scoot, but then at the end of it you can be like, "Hey man, every time I try to get past your guard here, like what's your game plan?" You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
what,
right. What's going on in
oh,
here?
yeah,
Yeah.
you can start shaking hands and being like, "What's, this was great." But it's obviously this was a technique like we brought up in that episode that he was not very comfortable with, and both of them were not comfortable with each other's techniques. And instead of just training that technique, they stuck to their game plan and said, "This is what I'm going to do." And it's
Right.
cool, but it's also we've seen this in practice. If you're not expanding your game to like, I know how to stand up now, and I'm going to bring him down to where I want him, or
Right.
anything like that, then you're ultimately going to put out a subpar product, and people aren't going to watch or want to watch at least.
Sure,
So
they're not going to want to watch, and then you're going to get smoked by people that are doing those things on a regular basis. And worse yet is that those are people that may or may not be of the same rank in the art that you train, and they come in and beat your ass, and then you're like, but wait a minute, I'm supposed to be this level of, and then you start wondering if jujitsu works,
yeah,
right? And it's not jujitsu that doesn't work, it's you're the one that doesn't work,
yeah,
right? So
it's your brain. You can put whatever you want in it.
that's true. And then I started thinking about all the stuff I actually put in my brain, which is no bueno, man.
Telling you, man, I had to like consciously delete apps and shit. You know what I mean? Like,
Right, right,
what do I
right.
do here? Oh, word search. Just do a word search. It's good. It's good for your brain.
Yeah, I think that if you, because the question came up this morning, we were talking about this after class. Can Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu be considered a mixed martial art? And I think the answer is a resounding yes.
Yeah,
But I think we should all be mixed martial artists in one degree or another. And if we're talking specifically about the sport of mixed martial arts, this is one of those things that we've also discussed here recently. And not to digress too much, but so much of like what we learn in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is applicable to, striking in a mixed martial arts environment. If you are able to use the tools and the techniques that you've acquired from Jiu-Jitsu, you can most certainly get people on their backs, dominant position, and put yourself in a space in which you can cause catastrophic damage to your opponent and they cannot do it to you. That's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
yeah. That's
It's not
why
just about submission holds
that was the
and
point.
locks.
That was the point that you brought up, was the fact that if you think about it, this was not the point, but the point where you said the gentle art, when you call it, why is it called the gentle art? This is, you brought up the point that it's because it gives you the option to
Right,
like you can control, you can neutralize a violent situation, and
right,
it's meant to control that. But it's also,
right.
it's almost like, if you think about it, it's like a video game. Like you learn, like what do you learn? You learn this technique. Okay, so you got your shield, then what do you get next? Then you get your sword, then you get your whatever. You've learned how to protect yourself from an attack. If you
Right.
need to attack, what are you going to do? Like, that's the thing, is you can learn you still learn part of that with jujitsu. You can learn how to break somebody's fucking arm, or you know,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
or,
we definitely do that.
I mean, choke them out, or their leg, or their Achilles, anything. You can do whatever you want in those cases. But like, as far as like, if it gets back up to standing, you know what I mean? Like, there's still other arts that you can learn that's going to make it easier. So,
Right,
so
right.
yes, you can protect yourself and you can, control the situation, but what it's about what's next. So most
Yeah.
of the time in jujitsu, and you even say this as well, if you can, it's mainly about getting up and getting away from that situation. But
If we're talking about self-defense, of course.
right, but
Right.
as any of this other things, like it's only going to, like, and with more people training and the more popularity that jujitsu seems to gain, it will be a situation where you're going to have to grow your game. You're going to have to continue to grow and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Even as a self defense thing,
Right.
it's just a situation where if growing your game is only going to help you. So is it can jujitsu be considered a mixed martial arts, Jeff? Yes, it can. But since we've decided this now, we actually have to call it Pat mixed martial arts now.
And we're moving out to the parking lot again, where you were originally starting your lucha libre system, but now it's just going to be called Pat's Mixed Martial Art.
PMMA.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
right, as appropriately labeled. So, what does the future then look like for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And I will note too that for us, we are very fortunate in where we train. Having a different, introducing different martial arts into our curriculum as jiu-jitsu fighters has always been part of the sort of the core ethos. I mean, we specialize in judo. We have a lot of like wrestling background. We're from Pennsylvania, of course. There's going to be a lot of wrestlers, and so like the questions, and then of course we have our own mixed martial arts program as well, and some very, very accomplished coaches and fighters that are coming out of our academies right now. We do look at this as sort of a continuum. It's not just one thing, and we don't approach it as a purist level. But for us, then, what does this mean for us, like for the future? I mean, what's jujitsu going to look like in 10 years? Do you think?
man, I would hope at that point we have leagues, we have some kind of professional. Well, I mean, we do have that now to an extent. We do have. I want there to be a UFC of grappling. You know what I mean? Like
Ah,
that's what I would like to see because I feel like it's already starting. I really like Chael Sonnen's Submission Underground, but I think I mainly like it because of the cage aspect of it.
okay.
A lot of times they kind of contain them in that, but so does one. One also does that as well.
Yep. Yep.
I want to see more of these organizations. I want to see more of a standout grappling only or grappling
Submission wrestling, we'll call it.
yeah, let's say submission wrestling, something of those lines. I'd like to see that because if there's a fucking slap fight league, you know what I mean? There can be there can be a
Yeah.
grappling league or something like that because that is so uninteresting to me, the slap fight thing, that I would like, at least for consideration, there to be a submission version of that we could all watch, like we talk about, where we can see some of the old MMA greats or anybody, like even if there's baseball players that started training Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'd love to see a celebrity jiu-jitsu like tournament. That would be something that would be really cool to see, not just
Yeah.
Berg or Tom Hardy or some shit like that, but like other people also. Like wouldn't it be cool to see Tom Hardy against like Sakuraba? Like that'd be weird. You know what I mean? Like that, but it'd just be like that's just like a cool weird thing. Or Anderson
Yeah.
Silva against like Al Bundy. That
Yeah.
both black belts. Not maybe not the same weight class, probably not, but that'd be something cool, you know?
Right, right, for sure. Well, actually, you bring up a really interesting point, and that would be cool if we had a more professional league that sort of opened the doors, much the same way that mixed martial arts, the UFC did for bringing together all these different arts. We have enough ground grappling and submission wrestling arts to bring them together in a venue that's entertaining, and
Yeah.
we can go back to like comparing these things, and then that opens the door for us to all start training together in a different light. So like if you're fighting, if we're saying it's jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu versus, I don't know, catch wrestling, which we've seen before, with guys like Josh Barnett and so forth that are fighting, that are catch wrestlers. But if we did it on a larger scale, then maybe we could start talking about like what things that we can retain from these experiences for our own art and our own teaching, but also provide a lot more entertainment for the people that are interested or would potentially be interested in watching it.
There's a lot of people out there that are like obviously interested in it because they've had a couple different events now with the submission, or whatever, wrestling or any of that stuff, like even the attempt at that with the damn it, what was that again? Well, I think it's just called Fury 6, whatever. Like
Yeah.
they had there's an attempt at production and all this other thing, but I think what you're talking about, putting a finer point on it, of saying like, here's a college wrestler against this person, here's a rule set, and here we go, you know what I mean? Like having
Yeah. So then they're kind of like, if you're scheduled to fight in a submission grappling tournament and let's say you're a college wrestler or athlete, you have X amount of weeks or months or whatever to start learning, and you're fighting a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter. Well, cool. That means the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighter needs to start working on like wrestling, takedown defense and pins, like how to get out of pins. And the wrestler needs to start learning how to basic defense from jujitsu attacks and then setting up their own submissions. I mean, it's a kind of a cool like, but if we did it on a scale that was large enough to include all these different forms of grappling, we could hit it more like ancient Greece, right? Or Rome and the Colosseum. Let's hit this shit, man. Let's do it. Yeah.
submission wrestling is the safest, like most competitive combat sport, I think, as far as like longevity and overall just entertainment in my eyes.
Well, we've talked about this before, though. That's like one of the coolest parts about the submission wrestling on a whole, and why I think that there would be, if you can set the formula correctly and have like, if we're talking about the future of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which also includes all the other grappling arts as well, is that if you can create an environment in which you can mix these things together and make it more entertaining, which of course I'm probably is like the $10 billion question, right? Nobody has quite figured this out yet. But the nice part about submission wrestling is that it's accessible to anyone. You can be like, when you watch this stuff on television, if you're watching UFC, you get 3 or 4 beers in you, and the next thing you know, you're like, I could do that shit. And then you show up into the gym and get your head caved in. You're like, never mind, I'm not doing this. Whereas like, or you actually never just pull the trigger on it, because it's a different world when you're getting punched in the head and punched in the guts and kicked in the leg and that kind of stuff. But this is accessible to everybody. You can be 50 plus years old and start in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or some other form of submission wrestling. I would recommend Jiu-Jitsu, but you can start in this, and you can actually practice and train in the things that you watch and enjoy. And I think that's what makes it so unique, and it's 100% alive,
Yeah, you
right?
know
You
what?
can do this for real.
That's 100%. That's a great example. That's a way better point than that is the most accessible, because you have that ability that you can go out there and compete almost
Yeah,
immediately. You can start
yeah.
getting that thing that, like, if it's a situation where like you can get off the couch and do whatever and start this, bare knuckle boxing in somebody's backyard or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But
You're gonna have a short career though, my friend.
right.
Yeah,
And for the most part, if you're in your 30s already, you're way too old to play most professional sports or compete
right.
in professional sports. But
Correct. Right.
grappling, you have the ability to at least have the option to, because it's very well matched in a lot of those cases. It's not like MMA where like, hey, a new up and comer is going against the grizzled old vet that's on his way out or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
It's like this
Right.
is another guy that started a couple weeks ago. He's about your age and height and weight. So yeah, go for it. That's how the
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu competitions usually work. So,
Right.
and
Right.
then you can get into the finer points. But you're right, it's very accessible. I think that's a great point to and that's the thing, is it it is the most accessible. So I believe, for as far as the future of jiu-jitsu, it has the most ability to grow. I know MMA has the most eyes on it probably right now as far as most
Sure.
sport,
Sure.
but it's still a situation where it's way more accessible than competing
Right.
at boxing at the pro level. There can
Exactly. Like that's not happening. If you're 40 plus years old, you're not going Golden Gloves and then going into a professional career. And
yeah,
then there's no other leagues. And what's funny too is that like things like freestyle wrestling and stuff like that, they don't have avenues for people that get out of once you're out of college. Like there's no real besides the Olympics, there's no avenue for you to really pursue, your
WWE,
huh?
WWF and whatnot. You start
Right.
flipping off and jumping through tables and shit.
Yeah, exactly right. So I mean, short of that, then go learn some submissions and some submission defenses and start training. And this gives you an opportunity to continue grappling for years and years to come. So and also your experience as a athlete from that, from wrestling or from some other martial art or something of that allows you to bring those skill sets and that knowledge to the table, which just makes us all better fighters, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Agreed. Much that it's a. I think there's much on the horizon but as far as 2024, I can see some of these things like starting to like take shape. You know what I mean? I can already see, like, I would
Yeah.
like to see a grappling. I'm already there's a match coming up for one, like they got belts for grapplers. They're basically they're taking a captive
Right.
audience that is there to see some sweet ass kickboxing and other things, and they're like, hey, by the way, here's a grappling match, and you're gonna see how entertaining this is gonna be because we got the Rotolos, we got the Langakers,
Ooh,
we got everybody you
yeah.
need, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like if and then once you start thinking about the super fights of certain ones of these, like you see a couple of like you just got to see the right fight. That's all it is. So
It's true
2024,
though. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The tournament format may not be the best one, but you start putting together these super fights and these like, and if you have like prelim cards or even grappling main events that are paired with kickboxing or mixed martial arts, and like we start to understand that these disciplines can work in and of themselves as entertainment, but also as as just a great form of a great display of athleticism and sport.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, there's no reason not to do it.
I think that's a great point to have them as the prelims because that's before the mat gets all bloody and we don't want to roll around.
Yeah, as though we don't roll around in each other's blood already.
Ew, 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 ew,
We do
ew.
plenty of that too, kids.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. We bleed too, but it's harder to squeeze it out of us, you know.
yeah, a little bit, a little bit. So, with that being said, Pat, I mean, and speaking of which, because it's a great segue into like what's happening in the world of jujitsu today.
A new competition coming up.
I'm super stoked on this one, Pat.
Maybe it's not new. I guess this is the
Well,
new.
it's
Yeah,
season 6, but
yeah, but it's maybe this is the federation that comes out on top as far as grappling federations, but it's the Professional Grappling Associate. Hold on, Federation.
it's federation. Yeah, it's the
Uh,
PGF.
the PGF. The grand prize for this is it's at 170 pounds. It's $100,000 competition with 4 team coaches. Right,
Yep,
are Jeff Glover, Andre
yep,
Galvao,
yep.
Roger Gracie, and the aforementioned Eddie Bravo.
Eddie Bravo. That's right. That's
Right.
right.
And not only is this the world of jiu-jitsu today, but it's actually real fucking news because it's not happening until
No,
April
because
21st.
it's not past
Right.
and it's not present. It's the
Coming up.
future.
It's coming up, baby.
If we're
So
talking about the future of jujitsu, baby, this is it.
so this is the by the way, I tried to look this up, and this is really funny. Little side note. I put in PGF season 6, and the first thing that came up was it was the wow, damn it, what was it? It was the pro here it is. Premier Girls Fast Pitch. And I was like, wait, fast pitch softball? I don't think Eddie Bravo has
Yep.
anything to do with softball.
Oh,
Uh
definitely Eddie Bravo does that. But yeah.
probably doesn't, he wears his cleats, on the mat. So
Oh, so he wears the shoes on the mat. He's definitely doing fast pitch softball.
but I did find it. I unfortunately was not able to access the website because it is not working at the moment.
Of
So
course.
I was trying to find some more info, but as of right now, it's from April 21st, Sunday to Friday, April 26th.
Correct.
And so I tried to look up the rule set. I tried to look up some other things, but this is pretty cool because you have 4 different teams, team captains being Andre Galvao, Jeff Glover, Roger Gracie, and Eddie Bravo. And I don't know if they are also competing or if they are only but they're team captains essentially. So
Right.
this is kind of like a little, I don't know if they do a draft or how this goes exactly. Are you familiar with this at all?
I am not. I'm not familiar with the setup, but I'm interested in it now that
Yeah.
you've clued me in on it. So
So I'm assuming this is going to be broadcast somewhere. I would hope. If not, I'm sure I can find it ripped somewhere or stolen or posted.
it would be helpful if the website was operational at this point. This is what we're talking about, guys. If you want to take this shit seriously, get your act together and get your website up and running.
Obviously not the biggest, but some huge names in jiu-jitsu are on
Yeah.
the card, and you're advertising it, and you're like, hey, go to this website. And then when you go to the website, they're like, either we got fast pitch softball or the network error. Ugh, nobody renewed this goddamn domain name. And you're like, what?
That's
Professional. Let's
Exactly.
take professional out of the name. Let's just
Yeah,
call yourself the grappling
exactly.
federation.
Right, right.
That's
Should we change it to AGF, Amateur Grappling Federation?
how
Because
about
feels like amateur night to me.
sounds like amateur night. Maybe leaves some to be desired. Grappling Federation. Either way, it looks cool. I hope we get to watch it, or maybe it's actually going to get broadcast. But
Yeah, that would be
um,
cool.
and that's I think something that's cool. And also, speaking of jujitsu or grappling professionals expanding their knowledge of mixed martial arts, I have a fun. I showed you the video already, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. A little buddy of ours, Mikey Musumeci, training his Muay Thai moves.
Yeah, Muay Thai. Yeah,
And he said
yeah,
Muay Thai is pain. That's
right.
what the video says, but it's a video of him, and I gotta tell you, he's got some power. Do you think he's uh thinking about possibly competing in MMA, or do you think maybe he's just rounding out his game personally?
No, I think that he'll likely end up going towards mixed martial arts. And I think that this is a natural progression for most jiu-jitsu fighters is that at a certain point, you have a very small window for you to start competing competitively in mixed martial arts for all of the reasons that we had mentioned prior. I mean, we do actually care about your guys' like health and longevity, your brains and so forth. You can't sustain damage like that for, too long. There are a few exceptions, of course, but for the most part, you have an age limit in which you can compete and be competitive in that environment. My guess is like he's at that point now where he's either influenced by or he himself is just interested in
Yeah,
pushing the boundaries of his martial arts knowledge. And again, this speaks to something else that I think is that we had brought up earlier and that I think is really great is that again this is just evidence of a true martial artist, right? That they're not one dimensional in their approach to how that if you're a jujitsu fighter, you're a jujitsu fighter, and that's it. I'm never touching another martial art. Like he's like, no, I'm a martial artist. Jujitsu is my foundation, and and perhaps could end up being his greatest love ever. And it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But that doesn't mean you can't train in Muay Thai. That
right.
doesn't mean, and he looks good too,
Yeah.
man. He looks good in that training video.
It was interesting because it was really cool to see the fact that like not only that like I there's something and we I've joked about it plenty of times about like grapplers soup people that are known for grappling, or we talked about it I think even on the episode about the game plans with the butt scooting and everything, just the last
Yeah,
episode. I don't know if I actually mentioned it by name or not, but like Ryan Hall and like a
yeah,
couple other people, like Cron Gracie is another person that is like very one dimensional as far as their approach to
right.
MMA a lot of times from what I've seen. And it's good to see that a grappler is maybe not, I don't know if I don't know, maybe this is, he didn't even consider that, but he's at least learning from their mistakes of like saying, like, I need to have a solid, because I believe he trains in Thailand a bunch and he loves it out there and everything. So, which is
Right.
because I don't know how much pasta and pizza he can get out there,
Yeah,
but he's,
but
you know what I
look,
mean?
we've said this before,
Yeah.
and it bears repeating, is that I think that if you want to consider yourself a competent jujitsu fighter, you should know how to throw strikes.
Yeah.
You should know how to throw strikes. You should know how to throw leg kicks. Like these are important facets of your understanding of how these and throw elbows. That's another,
Yeah.
another big one. That's a huge component of what you're training in jujitsu is putting you in a position, again, as we've mentioned before in the podcast or just this episode, is understanding like where I am in relationship to my opponent. How can I deploy the greatest amount of damage without taking damage myself? But among those skill sets would be how to throw strikes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
I
it's
agree
I
with
think
that.
it's interesting. Like that's some upcoming and some interesting news that's happening
Very.
in jujitsu today, Jeff. And I
Yeah.
appreciate your patience and understanding during this time.
Well, you're quite welcome, Pat. You know what that means?
What's this now?
You know what time it is?
I do know it's time to ask
Ask
a
a
black
black
belt.
belt.
Joe asked you, Jeff.
Ask away, Joe.
I don't know what this means exactly.
Well, I guess we'll figure it out together. Here we
Uh,
go.
how should I live? I don't know if this is like a fundamentally, religiously, like there's that's it. How
Hmm.
should I live?
How should I live? I
Very,
like this question.
it's a fucking deep question.
Yeah, I like this question a lot, Joe. You are a man who is on a quest. I can tell by
Yeah,
the question.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's like this is like this. I like that you're considering the weight of this question as well, because you're just like, hold on a second. I feel like if I once I answer this, he's gonna do something. He's gonna do
possibly,
he's gonna do
possibly.
yeah.
How should I live? This requires some serious consideration.
Yeah, yeah.
How should you live? Um, hmm. I say you should live viciously.
Viciously.
Yes.
So
No surrender.
so does that mean like basically like you see somebody drop their baby and you don't do anything to help, or like
No, that would be savagely.
oh okay. That's why we need the distinction. See, that's why we need because viciously, I'm just thinking like that dress
Yeah, no, you
look
you
fat.
should
Am.
listen. I can't. I don't know if you guys are into this kind of stuff, but I love watching like the either the YouTube videos or the shorts about like there's a dude that asks older people about like their regrets in life when they're like in their 80s and 90s or like life advice and stuff like that. We always wonder like what is the point of us all being here and all that other shit, and we're all on that same quest, right? So this question is like the question that I ask myself on a regular basis, like how should I live? And so I really actually appreciate it. I thought it was a great question, and maybe it was tongue in cheek and or not, but to me that was a really great. It was a very thoughtful question.
Yeah, don't live
So
savagely. Live.
yeah, don't, not savagely, viciously. All right. Like you've got no surrender. All right. This is the biggest thing. Everybody, okay, everybody quits is the big thing. All right. That's what I say. And I, of course, don't mean literally everybody quits, but most people quit at the things that they try to do in life. They try and get something going. They try and start their own business. They want to start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They want to they want to get married. They want to have a family, blah, 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 all these other things. They're going to run into obstacles. It happens all the time. It happens to all of us. I don't care how successful you think your buddy or your neighbor or your brother or whoever is, and they get all the luck. No,
Yeah,
no, they've run into obstacles too. They run into them all the time. And some of them are detrimental. Some of them are just guys, I've been working and professionally as a designer for 27 years. That's a long time to be doing any one thing. And I've been and I've and I, you could say that I'm successful at it because I've been doing it for 27 years. But there are definitely days, in recent days, where I'm like, maybe I should do something else.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, do I suck that bad at this that after 27 years? It's almost worse. It's
yeah,
almost worse to think that I've been doing it this long and still suck at it than, you know, than when I first started, right?
yeah.
But the truth is it's just an obstacle that's in your mind or in your way. Sometimes it's a literal obstacle, right? Your car broke down and that's a literal obstacle. You can't get to work, right? Like, or something went, but don't let those things stop you, right? You no surrender. You have to go and figure out a way over it, under it, or around it. So I say go be vicious. Like just
Live,
that's the stuff that you want. You want it, go get it, man. That's what I'm saying. You want to talk about cult mentality. This is I will be the Jesus of this cult and I tell everybody to just go after it.
yeah, I think live with intent. I think is a good way to like
A very good way to say it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't just live to live. Live with like have some purpose, and you got it. If you ask that question, how should I live? You think like I don't know, eat good, be nice, you know, the Hulk Hogan rule. Say your prayers, eat your vitamins, drink your milk. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, like I
Yeah.
would never have been able to actually give it that much of a consideration because immediately it just made my brain go blank. It was just kind of
Exactly.
how
Well,
should I was like,
as
am I even reading that right? How should
Le-
what is are those even right? That's not right.
well, Pat, as LeBron James says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I love LeBron James. Great guy.
So but no, you're right though, man. That's like, yeah, and look, guys, I have no grand, scheme or plan of being world famous or the best at anything. So mediocrity is perfectly okay with me. It's about self-satisfaction. It's about never giving up on myself,
Yeah,
not for anybody else. And Joe, for yourself specifically, just like, because that's that. And again, I'll repeat this. Everybody quits. They
yeah,
quit. They were like, this is too hard, it's too complicated. And then they start making excuses for why all the things that they couldn't get done didn't get done because of this, that, and the other thing. And then you fortify your position by being, by being bitter and angry
right,
and mean. So yeah, all those other things that you said, Pat, like eat well, be nice, like yeah, those things should occur, but it'll occur because you don't quit on yourself. You don't give up on yourself.
right. Yeah, I feel I feel like take that take willpower and make it Joe power.
Yeah, because fuck Will.
Yeah, fuck Will. Who why does he get all the power?
That's right.
So
Great question, Joe. Hot
fucking
damn.
great. This one a little lighter and
A
honestly
little bit on the lighter fare. Okay.
lighter, but Jeff, this comes from Mike. Hold on, Mike. This is what's your favorite book of all time?
Oh my goodness. I just got asked this question not too long ago by my own family members, and I had a very difficult time answering that question. But I would say that I have books that I'm not a huge reader, guys. I wish I was. I wish I wish that I had the motivation to read more and be a more prolific reader. How about that? Um, I would say I would say one of the books that had the greatest amount of influence on me is a book by Robert Leckie, and it's called Helmet for My Pillow, and it was about his experiences as a Marine during World War II fighting the Japanese, and it was profound in the sense that it gave a very civilized I shouldn't say civilized, it gave a very human perspective
Yeah,
on what combat was like during World War II or combat in general. From
yeah,
from
personal
some
account.
yeah, it wasn't what was great about it is that it stripped it stripped the American I want to say gung ho spirit that we have with like, when we do these types of like war films and books and so forth, where it's all about like courage and strength and all those things exist in Helmet for My Pillow, but it does it in a much more human way, where one that people can relate to as just being a fellow human versus, guns blazing, heroics and so on and so forth. So my favorite book of all time, I couldn't say because I have books that I've read that are not necessarily novels or things like that had a great influence on me. But in terms of novels, I would say Helmet for My Pillow was definitely on the one of the most influential books. It changed my perspective on how like people think about things. Does that make sense? And I read it when I was pretty young.
No, yeah, that's I think there's ways to because if you don't understand, like it's not just about certain things. Like I've always had an issue, whether it be when I was younger, like or just in general with like authority figures in general. Like I think we both have that kind of shared
Sure. Yeah, 100%.
where I've learned that like it's just like people are people.
Right. And I mean, I have a natural interest in other people's perspectives in their lives and the way
Yeah,
that they see things. That it's just a curiosity that I've always had ever since I can remember. And I've always gravitated more towards nonfiction stories than fiction stories. And just from the simple fact that I think that truth is often stranger than fiction.
yeah,
And that fascinates me. And so like anything that removes the sheen of bullshit that we like to place on everything. So
yeah,
we like to take history, for instance, and we like to rewrite it because it feels more comfortable to us.
right.
And what's the one thing, Pat, that we all learn as Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighters? We learn how to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And so I like anything that makes me a little bit uncomfortable. And I learn every time I'm uncomfortable, I understand that I'm learning something new.
Yeah,
And
it's
so that's why I like that book so much.
wonderful. I think that too. incredible questions that we got
Great questions.
insightful answers from. Jeff, I guess that just leaves one more question. If you do you mind if I ask a black belt something?
You may.
Awesome. What's on your turntable?
What's on my turntable? Pat, I tell you that I have been blessed with new music lately. Not new music in the sense that it's new to me music. How about
Okay,
that?
I got you. Yeah, yeah.
So a band that I've gotten into recently and over the last several months is a band called Trapped Under Ice. They're out of
Uh,
Baltimore, Maryland. Are you familiar with
yeah,
Trapped Under Ice?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
One of my
Hardcore band.
favorite too. Also, one of my biggest fears.
Yeah. So the record I'm going to recommend if you guys are interested in hardcore, this is like a new, like it would be a more contemporary style of hardcore versus like the old school or melodic hardcore that I grew up with in like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
This is more contemporary, so there's a bit more metal, there's a bit more thrash to it. But it's really well written music. It's very, one of the things I love most about more contemporary production and recordings, Pat, is the sound. The sound, we've evolved so much from an engineering perspective and recording artists and taking them seriously as musicians
yeah,
versus, and like, look, there's always going to be a place in my heart for the basement recording studio that just lays it down raw, and it's a punk band that just like lets it rip. Like, I love that. And it has a place this time. But one of the things I really appreciated about Trapped Under Ice, and the record is Secrets of the World. This one came out in 2010, so it's not new, but it's certainly not old. Just the production value of it is fantastic. I just love listening to the sounds that are captured in the recording, but the music itself is it's loud and violent, and it's exactly what I was hoping for when I listened to
yeah.
it.
It sounds as terrifying as a band named Trapped Under Ice would be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And East Coast represent, man. I've been very focused on like East Coast bands, and because I am a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Snob when
Yeah.
it comes to
You're a
the East Coast.
a real coast
So
queen. You're a real coast queen. You're out here.
I'm a coast queen. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you're like
Right.
name three cities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
ECFU, man. That's all I'm gonna say. ECFU, for those kids that don't know what that stands for, is East Coast fuck you.
Yeah, that's something I learned early on from a band known as a historical band, Bouncing Souls.
That's right.
But yeah, that's a great I think there's, speaking of like finding old bands, I talked about them last time, Gojira. Not a big
Yeah.
fan of a lot of their other stuff. But
Okay.
the fact that I could go back and find some of the old gems is a really cool thing. So I'm really excited to be like to Trapped Under Ice were we listening to them the other day at Guard
We
Passing?
were at guard passing day. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's because I was like, it sounds familiar, but I was also like, I didn't think it was somebody that I had heard from you, but I had definitely listened to this before. So that's really cool that I did recognize it. It must be a band that I have listened to before,
Sure.
you know,
Right.
but I
Right.
just haven't. So I don't know if I completely missed them, but I'm excited to check out that album in particular.
Yeah, definitely check out that record. It's a great one. It's great from start to finish, and that's I always appreciate. I know we live in a world where we make we put things on cycles for playlists, and it rotates through to different bands and different sounds. But there's still an art, in my opinion, to making a record
Yeah,
that goes from the start to the finish. And that's just me again being a snob
yeah.
and loving to like actually listen to the record from start to finish and discover new things about it. It's great. So anyway, great record. So Pat, that leaves me with only one question left, and that is, what's on your turntable, my
Oh,
friend?
time for a new segment. Ask a blue belt.
Yeah,
No, it's funny that you brought up the album from start to finish, because it's something that I like as well. I bring it up often about loving that, like not just the storytelling of a perfect album, but like literally the mood or the vibe throughout the entire, like building that. It's like writing a movie. It's like writing it's like ending a sketch well, like in comedy or something like that. It's like when you can think of a perfect ending to something, it's so hard to end stuff. It's very hard to end songs. Ask Against Me early on.
Yeah.
They couldn't fucking end a song. But there's a band that my wife sorry, I converted into Borat at that. My wife and I went to see in Philadelphia just this past Monday, and it's a band that every time I talk about them, I never know. I've never talked to anybody that has ever heard of them before. Like
Okay.
I discovered them. I can't even remember. It must have been like a Pandora shuffle, or it could have been
Right.
I heard this or whatever, but I fell in love with the song from this album in which they were touring a 10-year anniversary. The band is known as Lucius. Uh,
Okay.
and the album is known as Wilda Woman. It's
Okay.
it is an album that the song that I'm referring to that got me really into this band starting out is this incredible. So the best way to describe Lucius the band is incredible backing music. It's not technically a band. It really is just these two ladies uh
Okay.
that have incredible harmonies, and they go from singer-songwriter songs to like the best pop songs you've ever heard. They
Okay.
I don't know, and they all play instruments. They're all standing at instruments. Each one of the ladies has a keyboard in front of them, as well as a couple of percussion instruments like cowbell, tambourine, stuff like that. They have each have a floor tom that they play, as well as percussion.
Right.
A percussionist here, that a guitar player, a bass. I don't think they have a bass player. They have two guitar players, and
Okay.
this album they played from start to finish. You want to talk about being an album snob? I was talking to my wife. I'm like, well, she's like, she had to go to the bathroom really bad, and she's like, oh, I don't know, they're about to start, and I was like, you know what? I said, just try to hold it for like the first like five or so songs, and I said, and then it kind of dips a little bit, and then you can go to the bathroom, and you should have enough time to get back before it really ends big.
Right. Right.
But it was this incredible show at Brooklyn. It was a place in Philly, but it was called like the Brooklyn Bowl was the name of it,
Okay.
and it was one of the first shows I've ever been to where there were kids there. It was sold out, which
So
is
it's all ages. That's
yeah,
good.
and it was wonderful because it was sold out, Jeff. I went
Yeah.
like going, I don't know if anybody knows this band to
Yeah.
seeing their 10-year anniversary tour and knowing every word, and I'm telling you, this album from start to finish, it has the each song sounds like a single to me. It's each one of them sounds so familiar. I feel like everybody
Right.
probably heard them, but the song that really turned us on to them was Turn It Around, which is like the
Okay.
second song on the album. And to me,
Okay.
that's such a ballsy move to put such a, to me, an essential hit as like your second song. It's incredible. So check out
How do you spell the name of the band?
Lucius, and the name of the album is Wilda Woman, WILDEWOMAN, and it is it's incredible. It's from 2000, obviously from like 2013 probably, because if they're doing the 10-year anniversary, 14
Yeah,
maybe.
I have the Will to Woman expanded edition. It's got a cool cover art.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is like their visual, like they look so cool. They come out in these cool outfits. They have these like, it's not like Guar or anything, but it's such a stripped down, beautiful vocals. Like they are an incredible band, and it's every part of it is. But most recently, I got to appreciate that album again from start to finish live, and
Awesome.
it was really fucking cool. So
Good. I have it pulled up on Apple Music, man. I'll check it out.
man, that's every song of that fucking album rules, dude. It does dip, it dips, but like you cannot miss those first five or six banger after banger after bang, and you're like, what the hell? How could you? It's like they were able to capture like perfect pop music mixed with like incredible harmonies between like five voices. To watch five different voices harmonize like perfectly throughout the entire show is so incredibly impressive to me with how many pop acts and other, big things like have backing tracks and this and that. Like it's immensely impressive to see it live. So
Right.
you can't do
Awesome.
that, but check out the album.
Boy, yeah. Well, I'm sold, man. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah,
I'm going to check it out.
I'm gonna check it out.
So awesome. What'd you say?
I said I'm gonna check it out.
Okay. Well, I'm going to check it out.
Fine, good,
You should.
fine.
You do fine. You do it.
I hope people realize that there was a cat over here. That's what I was doing. I wasn't like
Okay, Pat.
wasn't working my side job over here.
I mean, dude's got to make money, man. Like, I mean, it's not. You got to live viciously. Remember that we're going to live to fight. We're going to fight to live, and no surrender.